Yeah. Hey, child support. I know that it got you stressing. You've been looking for some answers. You got so many questions. Mike Aikins got your back, and I gotta mention his book, A Simple Guide to Child Support Redemption. Hold up, get you back on track. Now it's time to make it happen. Save a whole lot of stacks. You gotta read through the chapters. You are really not alone. I know it can be controversial, but he's really here to help you when it feel like people trying to hurt you. Ain't no shame, time for educating yourself, giving examples and cases so you ready for what's next. Documented testimonies, step by step, easy to read. Be prepared in legalities, don't need a legal team. Hey, came to let you know, you don't wanna miss it. Hey, a simple guide to child support redemption. Hold up, came to let you know, you don't wanna miss it. A simple guide to child support redemption. Let's go.
Welcome to Relevance. The world's greatest podcast. Hosted by author Mike R. Aikins. Where they dare to talk about topics that really matter.
Welcome to the Relevance Podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Relevance Podcast. I am your host, author Mike R. Aikins, where we dare to talk about issues that really matter. My mission on this podcast, this is my very first podcast, and I've decided to expand my brand and add this podcast as another form of intellectual property to everything else that I'm doing. For all of you out there struggling with the fraud and corruption of the child support payment system, be sure to check out my book, A Simple Guide to Child Support Redemption. It's available on Amazon.com and also Walmart.com. I've also recently developed a new mobile app to supplement the book. It's aimed at millennials that don't like to read and would rather watch videos instead. It's called Child Support Made Simple, and it's available on the Google Play Store. As I always say, for anyone out there listening, if you would like to get a copy of my book or download my mobile app, but can't afford it, just drop me a note at authormike@relevancepodcast.com, and I'll send you a complimentary copy. Because, folks, I'm not out here to make money. I'm out here to help people who are struggling with some corrupt things going on out there in the world. And I've been through a lot, and I think it's my calling to be able to help others that are struggling with some of the same things that I was able to overcome. The only thing I ask is that you subscribe to my YouTube page, author Mike R. Aikins, and submit a comment on one of my videos. Once you do that, just drop me an email, and I'll be happy to send you a complimentary copy of either the book or my mobile app. So if you came to this podcast after visiting my YouTube page or the relevancepodcast.com website, feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment, because this is how I stay in tune with you. This is how I know exactly what my listeners are wanting. And this is how I know that you're listening to me. Today's topic of discussion will be employment discrimination. It's a great topic. It's a lot of what everyone is going through right now. Anyone who's not working, who's not self-employed, of course, has to work for the establishment. And we're going to talk about several levels of employment discrimination that's typical out there in the workplace today. Now, when we start talking about the levels of unemployment or employment discrimination, there are several different areas of concern. We have discrimination in age, we have racial discrimination, we have gender discrimination, and we have salary discrimination. If that's a category that I can throw in there, I definitely want to talk about how people are discriminated on their salaries in the workplace, as opposed to other issues that come into play when they are discriminated in terms of how much they're being paid. We're also going to touch upon the golden age of the HR department. It's becoming a dinosaur nowadays, and the way they're doing it, it's really something that needs to be explored. We're going to also talk about the onboarding process, which a lot of these companies are doing now. Before you can get on with the company, you usually have to go through the onboarding process. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well as training, working with recruiters and staffing agencies, your resume, playing the office politics game. We're going to talk about some alternatives to starting your own business, developing your own brand, doing things like what I'm doing in terms of having a podcast, writing your book, starting your own business, things of that nature. So without further ado, let's get started. So when we start talking about employment discrimination, there are several types, as I mentioned earlier. The number one thing that I'm dealing with the most at this particular point in my career is age discrimination. Now, age discrimination, I never thought it would happen to me. I just looked up one day and realized I was 55 years old. And a lot of people consider that to be old. Even though I don't consider it to be old at all. I don't look 55. I get a lot of compliments on a regular basis telling me that I look like I'm in my 30s and whatnot. I wish those were the people that were making the hiring decisions, because the people making the hiring decisions, although they never say it, they're very, very particular about what they say to you when they hire you or when they don't hire you. So the old days of getting feedback from people that don't hire you are pretty much over. I think a lot of companies are afraid to get sued. They're afraid that they would get sued for discrimination if they told you exactly why they didn't hire you. But age is a very big factor. I overheard a couple of women talking about it at my office the other day. This was a Caucasian woman and an African American woman, and they were both in their 50s, and they were both talking about how recently they've been applying for jobs and they have not been getting hired, and they think it's because of their age. So I really feel like it really is because of your age. A lot of these companies feel like, as we all know, they can hire someone half your age and pay them half the money that they pay you. That used to be set in stone. Nowadays, it's really not, because older people are taking less money to work, and they know that, but they won't hire you anyway if you're over 50. So you have to be in the right type of environment. Usually when they're hiring people over the age of 50, there's a department that is looking for a more mature level of people to hire. And usually when this is the case, they'll hire someone in their 50s, and it'll be a lot more mature environment. You'll have very few kids that will sneak in there. You do have some situations where some younger people, there will be a age disparity. You might have someone in there 25 years old working with someone with a bunch of 50-year-olds. I mean, that happens a lot. I see that a lot. And but you might have the majority of the people out there that are in their 40s and 50s, have families, have jobs, have major responsibilities. Then you may have someone that is still living at home with their parents, or they're in their early 20s and they're just now getting started out there in life. But anyway, the reason why you see this is because older people nowadays are doing whatever they can just to get a job, just to make some income. So age is really the biggest form of discrimination that's out there today. It's hard to prove. If you were to try to sue a company for discriminating against you because of your age, it would be very hard to prove. So good luck with that if that's what you're trying to do. Now, racial discrimination has been one of the most prolific ideologies out there since the dawn of time. And being a black man, I can tell you a couple of different scenarios where the racial discrimination was blatant. I've had situations where I'll get interviewed on the phone. They will call me to set up the phone interview based on my resume, which nowadays on your resume, you can't go, they want you to go back no more than 10 years in your experience. That way, in most cases, you won't be discriminated, but they can also look at your, if you graduated from college, if you have a college degree, they can look at the date of your graduation date. And they can also use that to discriminate against you. So a lot of people don't put their graduation date down, and it's not a requirement. A lot of times they will ask you, but you really don't have to put it down. I mean, you can prove it with a transcript when it comes down to a hiring situation. My thing is this. The thing that I try to tell most people is try to eliminate anything that they can use to discriminate against you in the beginning. And if that means taking a date off of your college transcript, or taking the graduation date off of your application, but letting them know you did graduate. Also going 10 years back, which is what most recruiters recommend, so that they can't just right off the bat disqualify you for being a certain age. And then also, I hate to say it, but your name could be a serious way that you're getting discriminated against. For most African American people out there that have really seriously African American names, and I say that because my name is sort of a crossover name. You wouldn't know if I were black or white based on looking at my name right off the bat. So I've been able to capitalize on a few situations, whereas also when I speak on the phone, when I'm in my professional voice, you don't know that I'm a black man. And so I've been hired basically over the phone based on my resume and a conversation with the hiring manager over the phone. And then when I drove down to the location on site to finish up the interview and to start working on the onboarding process, and they find out that I'm a black man, if I had $1 for every situation that immediately turned opposite for me, which is that they didn't hire me, I'd probably be a millionaire right now. And this is why I'm addressing the topic of discrimination, employment discrimination, because there are several levels of it. It's not just age, it's not just racial, it's not just gender, it's not just some of those factors, but it's a combination of all of it. It seems that managers nowadays, if there's a manager out there working for a major corporation, that manager is looking at his own job security. So that manager is not going to hire someone with more experience than what he has. If that manager doesn't have a college degree, the likelihood of him hiring someone with a college degree is slim and none, because he's not going to hire people that are more qualified than he is for fear that he might be replaced on his job. That happens a lot. This happens more than you can actually shake a stick at. I know of situations where managers, they look to keep the revolving door going for hiring people because they want to keep the level of people working under them less qualified than what they are. So I think they look at it like this. If they can keep people that report to them with a lower skill set and lower experience level than what they have, then the company is always going to refer to them or defer to them to keep their job because the people below them know less than what they know. This is a phenomenon that's going on right now in a really big way. So we've talked about age discrimination. We've talked about racial discrimination. Let's talk a little bit about gender discrimination. So gender discrimination is really complicated these days with the LGBT movement and all of these different things out there nowadays. But if a woman wants to come on the other side and work on a job that typically have more males than females or that are typically dominated by males, she can do it, and it will be really to her advantage because most of these types of jobs are going to not want to blatantly discriminate against a woman for applying for this type of job. Let's take an example of that. Like if you were applying to be a truck driver. Now, typically truck drivers are made up of mostly men, but nowadays you are starting to see women out there who are applying for truck driver positions and who can get out there and put some gloves on and do a little dirty work, raise up a trailer door, unhitch a trailer from an 18-wheeler. These are kind of challenging things for a weak female. And when I say a weak female, I don't mean it weak in character. I mean weak in terms of strength. I mean, you have to have strong hands and, you have to be able to lift a certain amount of pounds to be able to go out there and unhitch those trailers from those trucks, open those big swinging doors, jack up those trailers, and oftentimes lift certain boxes off the truck to get the unloading and loading situation going, as well as sit up in that cabin of the 18-wheeler and have arms long enough to drive that big 18-wheeler because of the huge steering wheel that they have in there and be able to reach down there and shift those gears. I mean, so it's, a lady who wants to apply for that job, she's not going to be discriminated against in terms of her gender if she really wants to do it, and if she really applies at companies that are aggressively recruiting women for that particular industry. So now let's touch upon the salary situation. A lot of times, when you go to a job, it is taboo to even bring up the subject of what you were hired, the rate that you were hired at. But nowadays, I've been in a couple of scenarios where I've been hired on with a company and I've been hired with a group of people and they're paying us all the same amount of money. So even in the employee handbook and the code of conduct and things of this nature, you will rarely find anything in there stated about salary, because nowadays, when they bring people into these large companies, they bring in a big group of people and they pay them the exact same amount. This does a lot of different things to the employment process, which usually don't cater to the individual, caters more toward a group. And usually you can see the levels of discrimination when you're hired in this type of capacity, because regardless of your experience and your skill set, if you're brought in with 45 other people and you are all paid exactly the same thing. There was a screening process that took place, and these people went out and targeted a certain group of people, and with you being included, they went out and they targeted you based on, of course, your experience. They won't tell you this, but usually it's based on your race as well. And it's also based on your age. So all of the levels of discrimination and all of the different categories that we've previously discussed come into play. So another thing that I wanted to talk about was the golden age of HR departments. Okay, HR departments have changed a lot lately. Usually, it used to be a time where you could get on with the company. There was an onboarding process. You had an HR director, an HR generalist, an HR manager, an HR supervisor. You had trainers working in the HR department. I mean, it was just a huge department, huge and vibrant, and they were doing so many so-called helpful things for the employees. Well, nowadays, that has changed drastically. HR departments have been virtually eliminated. Unless you work for an extremely large company, and even if you work for an extremely large company nowadays, they've basically eliminated a lot of people in the HR departments. So what happens is all of these different things that you do when you're getting hired, you pretty much do them yourself. The I-9s that you fill out, they do that through DocuSign, and they have you scan or take a picture of your birth certificate, driver's license, or social security card and scan it in. Then they have someone on site that simply goes through and is a witness or verifies the information or the hard copy information after you get to the job site. So this is a way that they have systematically eliminated several different levels of people in the HR departments. And a lot of times people don't really understand HR departments are not for the employee. HR departments are going to they're going to take the side of the manager in any type of situation. I know that I've had a lot of people reach out to me and tell me that they've been bullied or they've been discriminated against by a manager or somebody at their job. And one thing I always tell them is that they always say that, they go to the HR department and the HR department was either helpful or they weren't helpful. In most cases, they're not helpful because people don't realize that the HR department is on the company side. The HR department is not on the employee side. So you have to be very careful at how you approach your HR department. If you have a personal issue, issue with your manager, issue with someone who has harassed you sexually or salary-wise, or has basically discriminated against you in terms of a promotion or anything of that nature that you step to the HR department to correct, you have to realize that these HR departments are not going to be on your side. They will act like they're on your side, but they're really not on your side. So the best way to deal with this particular type of situation is to document. If you do so happen to come up with a lawsuit, you're able to bring a lawsuit against your company. It's going to be very, very difficult to do, but you will need to document everything. And when I say document everything, I mean everything. I mean, you have to put the date and time that the incident occurred, and you have to write it down in something that you're going to be able to keep on your person or keep with you at all times, because when you get terminated and when you get fired, they're not going to let you go back to your desk in a lot of situations. A lot of times companies will trick you. They will send you out to get something, run an errand, do something. And when you get back, somebody will meet you at the door and tell you, hey, you're being terminated. Can I go back to my desk and get my things? No, that won't be necessary. Somebody's going to box up your stuff and meet you out at the front desk. And usually they'll have a security guard walk you out. And this seems very drastic, and it is drastic. I mean, I've known situations where people have worked for companies for 20 years, and when they get let go, instead of them doing it in a respectful way, they do it this way. They put everybody in a box, and they treat everybody the same way when it comes down to terminating you because of the legal ramifications of what you could actually do to them if they do the process wrong. So I know that you know of people that have been let go and have been treated improperly, but they do this so that there'll be not a lot of situations where you'll be able to put on a show, act a fool, make a big scene so that other employees will see you on your way out. But anyway, we'll address this issue on a topic all by itself one day. We'll talk about different scenarios based on people getting terminated and how that usually goes down. But I mentioned earlier about the onboarding process and how a lot of companies are using the onboarding process in different ways to bring you on or bring you aboard your new company. And I was recently hired by a company, and they have a very unique process. They have an annual meeting at the end of the year where it's they base it on the Christmas element. And so it's a company event at the end of the year. They usually fly you out or bring you out to wherever they're located or wherever they want to do this at. You know, they spend a lot of money doing this, but when you look at it, it's still going to be cheaper than having an entire HR department working full time for a whole year. So a company might say, well, gosh, you know, we got 30 employees. They're flying us all out to an island in Florida. We're having this big, huge event. How much are they spending on this? Wouldn't it be cheaper just to have an HR department? But it's probably cheaper to do it the way they're doing it. Because if it weren't, they wouldn't be doing it. Just think about it like that. Companies are smart nowadays. So they're using all sorts of different ways to get you hired, get your paperwork done, get you in training and whatnot, so that they could take advantage of your employment skills. But there are several different types of onboarding processes out there. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies have been using DocuSign, been using an automated process online. As soon as you get on with them, as soon as you go through the resume process, as soon as they give you your drug test, you pass your drug test, you pass the background check, they immediately start the onboarding process. And usually the onboarding process will consist of verifying all of your documents that qualify you to work in this country, as well as starting the process of training you to work your specific job. So a lot of this is being done online nowadays to eliminate the number of people that they have to keep on staff in the HR department. So anyone out there now that doesn't have the computer skills, skills over the internet, skills with the computer to be able to do these things, you're gonna be left out, and they're gonna go toward the people who can do this. So this is another form of discrimination. I should have put this in the other category, in one of the category under types of discrimination, as computer skills and access to the internet, because this is very important. A lot of people nowadays, most people, I would say 95% of the people have smartphones. These smartphones have become commonplace nowadays. Some jobs will even hire you and ask you to use your own smartphone to do that job that they hired you for. Some companies will get you a phone with their number and everything. They will issue you a phone, but you have to be very careful about these types of scenarios and only use that phone for company business. As a lot of people don't understand, when you're using your company phone for personal business, everything is being documented and recorded. And that company could come back on you at a later date and say that you were using company property for personal reasons. That would be a simple reason to terminate you if it came down to it. If they wanted to decrease staff, decrease payroll, which is usually something that happens that a lot of companies do on a regular basis. They look for reasons to decrease the number of staff because they're going to tell you that when they do that, they're going to also increase profit. So nowadays, it seems that companies are really looking for ways that they shouldn't hire you or reasons to not hire you instead of reasons to hire you. I recently went through a situation at working for a company where they required pay stubs, W-2 pay stubs from my previous employers. Now, this is the first time that I've ever had a company ask me for W-2 pay stubs, or they wanted to see a pay stub from my previous employers. Now, a lot of people are going to run into problems when they do this because you may not have pay stubs if that company went out of business or if you got laid off, or a lot of people have been through floods. They've had Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita. Things like this have happened in big cities and have really affected a lot of people, millions of people, where they don't have records to prove that they work for a company, and they may not want you to call that company they may not want their potential company to call that previous company to verify whether or not they work there. So companies are now asking for pay stubs, and that's really, really a unique situation. It used to be they would only ask for pay stubs if you were working in a position of finance, where you were maybe in an outside sales position and they wanted to see your body of work. They wanted you to prove that you made money in outside sales, so they ask you for a pay stub. Now, that's a normal situation, and that's what usually happens. But nowadays, they'll ask you for a pay stub even if you didn't work in sales. And then there are also some scenarios where companies will ask you they will run a credit check on you. So a lot of people have to be aware of this. If you're working in the finance industry, banking, anything that has to do with handling money, they might ask to run a credit check on you. And then what I'm hearing from most people is that you won't be able to have any more than like 4 judgments or charge-offs or derogatories on your credit profile in order to be hired at that company. So that's really another important factor that is coming into play a lot nowadays is your credit history. So these are all important topics that have a lot to do with the hiring process now, but they also have a lot to do with discrimination that the average person may incur in working at different companies and stuff like that nowadays in the United States of America. Now, we wanted to talk a little bit about working with recruiters and staffing agencies. That is also very important when it comes down to landing a job out here. It's really funny nowadays. The system of working with recruiters and staffing agencies is totally different than it was a few years ago. Anybody out there that has worked with a recruiter or a staffing agency will understand that staffing agencies recruit specifically for certain positions. You may be out there and you worked with a recruiter and they submitted you along with several other people and you were not chosen. That recruiter will not even give you, nowadays, will not even give you an explanation of why you weren't chosen. They won't even call you back. They won't even let you know anything for fear of them getting sued. They'll just move on to the next person. And you see this a lot out there nowadays. And even with staffing agencies, you go in there and you're expecting a staffing agency to find you a position. And a lot of times, if you really think about it, that staffing agent is out there. They're not going to give you a job better than theirs. I mean, think about it. You go in to work for someone, or you go into a staffing agency wanting a job, and that staffing agent is sitting right there, taking you in, getting all of your qualifications, your resume uploaded, interviewing you, doing all of this stuff. But think about it for a second. If you're in there looking for a job and you're looking for a job better than what they have, how ironic is it that they're working in the staffing industry and that they're going to give you a job better than the job that they have? I mean, it just doesn't really work like that. So, I mean, you have all of these huge staffing agencies out there, Robert Half and Apple One and all these big companies out there, but I've never had any good luck working with staffing agencies. But I sat down and I thought about it one day. I'm like, how is one of them going to give me a better job than what they have? And usually they don't make a whole lot of money. They just have, somewhat job security if they can keep the people coming in and out, if they can keep the people matched with the jobs that they're recruiting or staffing for. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on working with recruiters and staffing agencies. I'm going to have to come back and do another segment about that entirely. So we'll move on to your resume and how important that is in terms of having a legitimate resume that will represent your skills and put your best foot forward. I cannot overemphasize the importance of a resume. And a lot of times people are going out there getting people to write their resumes and they're not able to go in and articulate what's being written. Now, if you're a person that can't write your own resume and you get someone to write it for you, be sure you study and read and tell those people what you want on your resume and at least control that process, because if you don't, and somebody writes you this incredible resume and then you get to the job and you get to the interview and you can't articulate what was put on that resume, you're not going to get the job anyway. So it kind of defeats the purpose to have this incredible resume that you can't live up to. But by the same token, people will tell you a lot, as you will be second guessing yourself in terms of why wasn't I hired. People will, first thing someone will say is, you need to get a better resume. But I'll say this: if a company wants to hire you, regardless of your resume, they're going to hire you. If you know someone that works there, or you're being targeted because of your skill set, that company will hire you. They'll find a way to hire you. Okay, they're not going to hire you based on you not having a good world-class resume. So the resume will get you in the door sometimes with companies that you don't know anyone that works with that particular company, and you're just trying to get in from off the street. Okay, you come in with a world-class resume, and yeah, you may get an interview and you may get a chance to get your foot in the door. But resumes are very tricky. You need to really do your research on the resume process, and you need to be able to develop a resume that's going to carefully articulate your skill set, your education, and the best things that you bring to the table. Office politics. Now, we want to talk about office politics. I have that underemployment discrimination is because you can get on with companies nowadays, and you must understand that from the time you walk in that door, everything you do or say is being looked at. Everything you do or say, you're being judged upon everything you do or say at that particular point when you accept the job. So you have to come in with a certain demeanor, a certain style, a certain class. You got to come in with a certain behavioral tendency that will allow you to move up in that company. And I say this a lot to people because office politics play a really big part in how far you go in a company. A lot of people say you got to know how to play the game. You know, if you're out there working for a company and they have a company event, they want to invite everybody out for drinks after work or whatever. You know, you have to understand, if you can thrive in this type of role, a lot of times I say don't do it, because anytime alcohol is involved and you go out and you don't hold your alcohol well, then you may do something to affect your job by just going out and hanging with your coworkers. And then by the same token, at the other end of the spectrum, if you don't go, you may be looked upon as not a team player. So I say go, but don't drink. So this is a situation where I've worked in situations where I've never drank in front of any of my employees. I don't have a Facebook page, so I'm not on Facebook pics with drinks in my hands, party like a rock star and all that kind of stuff. So your online image and your ability to maintain your composure and show a lot of class in these extracurricular company activities will go a long way in determining how long you stay on with the company. And will also go a long way in determining if a company is going to keep you there, discriminate against you for something that you're entirely oblivious to, or if you're going to have a great career there, get promoted, so on and so forth. So some of the alternatives, as I want to close out this particular podcast, some of the alternatives that you have in terms of employment discrimination is to start your own business. It's a no-brainer out there. A lot of people are doing it with the age of the internet. You could go out there, you could be a blogger, you could be a vlogger, you could be a podcaster, you could create your own website. There are several different things, work from home. There are a million things out there nowadays that you can do instead of the traditional way of just going to a company and applying, putting in an application and hoping for the best. So I offer consultation for people out there that want to start their own business. I have over 30 years of experience running small businesses on my own. I've had some successful businesses out there that I've done, that I've grown from working out of the trunk of my car to multi-million-dollar businesses. So these are things that can be done. You do need to have other people in your corner to be able to be successful with it. I tell people all the time, if you're starting your own business, don't try to do everything by yourself. There's going to come a time where you're going to have to get other people involved. You're going to have to share and trust other people to come in and work with you to grow that company. And if you're a self-employed person out there, you've started your own business, you've put all your sweat equity into it, you've grown it up to a certain level, but you're not able to, say, turn the corner and expand or, get sales of over $1 million, it's because you're trying to do it all by yourself. You can't do that. You gotta network with other professionals, people that have the experience that you have, and you gotta draw up some agreements, some formal agreements, employment agreements with others in order to take your business to the next level. So with that being said, I am going to end this particular podcast. This is my first podcast, so I do want to say that these will get better as we go. But today's topic was very interesting. I'm hoping that you find this topic very interesting and that you'll leave some comments. We've reached the end of today's show, and I would like to say thanks again for listening, and may God bless you in your goals and endeavors to someday become who you were put on this earth to be. Don't forget to be on the lookout for my next podcast, and feel free to send me an email at authormike@relevancepodcast.com. Goodbye.
As always, thanks for listening in on the show. And be sure to check out Mike's book, A Simple Guide to Child Support Redemption, available on Amazon.com, or his mobile app, Child Support Made Simple, CSMSX, available through the Google Play Store. And for the latest in current events and videos that really matter, be sure to log on to Mike's YouTube page, author Mike R. Aikins, or his website at www.relevancepodcast.com.
Yeah. Hey, child support. I know that it got you stressing. You've been looking for some answers. You got so many questions. Mike Aikins got your back, and I gotta mention his book, A Simple Guide to Child Support Redemption. Hold up, get you back on track. Now it's time to make it happen. Save a whole lot of stacks. You gotta read through the chapters. You are really not alone. I know it can be controversial, but he's really here to help you when it feel like people trying to hurt you. Ain't no shame, time for educating yourself, giving examples and cases so you ready for what's next. Documented testimonies, step by step, easy to read. Be prepared in legalities, don't need a legal team. Hey, came to let you know, you don't wanna miss it. Hey, a simple guide to child support redemption. Hold up, came to let you know, you don't wanna miss it. A simple guide to child support redemption. Let's go.